Daisy.
And I'm Terri.
And this is the Monday Mindset Podcast,
where we share things of interest to us and hopefully to you.
So let's get started with episode number 265. And this week we thought we'd do another catch-up. Well, it's not a catch-up, it's a follow-up from the catch-up. It will become clear. There are a few things that I was thinking the other day when you were asking me, is it my turn? Is it your turn? And I was thinking it would work really well to do a follow-up from our catch-up because you had been putting out specifically, there are some other things that I can follow up from my catch-up as well. But specifically, I was thinking about the things that you were talking about with going on holiday, vacation, as you like to say, to Barcelona. And you had been putting out some short videos on social media before you went, while you were there. I'm sure some of the people listening to this will have seen them. But talking about things that we talk about so often, so it just seemed a very fitting time to discuss that further. And that was mostly talking about how you were going to be eating while you were away. You'd had people asking you, how are you going to handle that? How are you going to manage it? And, you felt fairly confident going into that because it's now part of your identity. It's what you do. So you're naturally sort of trained. Well, I'll let you talk about it, but you're naturally trained to look for certain things and handle things in a certain way and not necessarily to eat all the time other people are eating or what they're eating or how that all works. So I thought it would be really good to catch up with you after you'd been, now you're back, to find out how it went. And I have to say, I don't think you posted them publicly, but you shared some pictures with me of some of the things you were eating, and it was, they look delicious.
It was delicious. And one of the things I'm really glad that you just highlighted that part is I think, and of course this applies to other things in life too, but specifically we talk a lot about this health part of our lives and this food experience, in that oftentimes people are nervous that as they've started adapting their eating behaviors to be healthier for them, they feel this pressure that they're not going to be able to do that. What will they do when they go on vacation? What will they do when they go to that family celebration in July? Or what will happen when this happens? And I didn't know this when I began this part of my health journey, but it's really become evident to me the more we make it part of our identity, as James Clear emphasizes so much, that I've really enjoyed it. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't stressed about it because, of course, I was going to find food there that I enjoy and that works for me. Maybe it is good for people to hear on the other side. Yes, I loved the food in Barcelona. And yes, I still ate congruent with my approach. And that those aren't contradictory things. It's not like, well, I'm on vacation and I want to stay congruent with my food. Well, I can't do both. I could do both. Was it perfect? No, but I never expect that what I'm doing food-wise is perfect. And I think that's one thing that many of us have to kind of get over or release, is that we're not going to be perfect about things. But I know there are certain things that are more triggering for me, so I stay clear from them. And there are some things that are less triggering for me. And so if I'm going to branch out a little bit, I branch into those because I know they're a little bit safer for me. So it's really just about having learned what my identity around food really is. What are the things that are most challenging for me? What are the things that are most easy for me to do? And then, the in-between. The other piece that was really significant for me, and I had many people ask me about this because I had shared this, my 1-year anniversary of eating no sugar fell on June 1st, and I left for Barcelona on June 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So a little curiosity for everyone is, what are you going to do about sugar? And I won't say that it didn't cross my mind that, well, I met my goal and I'm going on vacation. But for me, it was so much more, why would I change what is going well for this week on vacation, particularly because I know opening that door for me would make it hard now that I'm home. I don't think I would have handled, I'm just doing sugar because I'm in Barcelona. It would have opened the door wide open. The floodgates would have opened. And so for me, it was and I know this may sound weird to some people, but it was an easy decision. I haven't been doing it for a year. Why would I do it there? No, I'm not having sugar. I think sometimes people think, well, that's easy for you because blah, blah, blah. It's not easy for me. Would I still love to eat sugar? Absolutely. Do I still like the way it tastes? Absolutely. And I was with people who consumed a lot of it. There were nightly gelato runs. There were pastries all times of day. I just didn't engage those foods during those times. I didn't go on some of the gelato runs. Some of them I did because I wanted to be out with people and I wanted to be out on the streets and seeing, the evening in Barcelona. But the gelato didn't fit my identity. And so I enjoyed the rest of the experience. Sometimes desserts came to the table at a meal and I just didn't. I might have ordered another coffee during that time because that was my nice way of ending my meal. So the question about the sugar for me actually was pretty simple. It didn't fit to open that door for me. Now, someone else might go into a situation like that and say, I eat a lot less sugar than I used to, or I have changed my approach to eating in these ways, but I want to open the door a little bit while I'm on vacation. And I think that's a fair approach. I struggle with it. My brain has a hard time with saying, sure, you can do a little. Not really in my vocabulary. So I usually recommend to people, if they are going to open the door a little bit, that they be strategic about it. How will you do that?
Yeah.
Maybe there's one particular thing you're really wanting to have while you're there. Great. When will you have it? But going back to your overall lead into this, Daisy, it was easier even than I thought it would be. And my partner was a little nervous going into it. And I didn't know this, but she said, I'm kind of nervous. Like, what are you going to do about food while we're there? And I think her concern was that I was going to be bummed or miserable and that was going to affect the four of us. But I wasn't. I was enjoying those meals. And I know how to navigate being with people who are eating differently than me. That's no longer a reason for me not to enjoy that meal. So it really went quite well. But the piece that you really highlighted is because it's not something I signed up for and I'm going to do for 6 more weeks.
Yeah.
This is something I'm doing in all parts of my life from here until the end of my life. All of my meals are curated based on my approach to eating. All of my days are curated based on TRE, not snacking, not grazing. And some of my days are curated based on I'm fasting. And so there's no decision to be made. But I didn't fast while I was on vacation, but I did do TRE. I did eat meals. And I also think for some of us, that's almost easier on vacation because you kind of have to go to a restaurant. Well, I'm not going to go to a restaurant 7 times in the day where, if I were snacking at home, I could snack anytime. I'm not going to do that on vacation. So I stuck with what I already do, even though it was a new environment and there were new decisions to make and choices that I had available to me that I don't have here. But the overall navigating of it was easy because it's how I live my life now.
Yeah. I have to say, I was pretty confident that you'd find things that fit your approach. I've not been to Spain myself, but I'm familiar with the kind of things that would be on offer, not a million miles away from France. I could guarantee, for example, that most bars and places you'd be able to get a charcuterie plate if you couldn't get anything else. That's always something you can get in France. There's usually a cheese plate available as well. And we were saying this before we started recording. It's also a very normal thing to have. Nobody would look at you as odd for eating that. It's very typical. That's why they're on the board in bars and things, because it's a very typical snack to be having when you're having your drink. And actually, what's very normal in places like that is that you're having your pre-dinner drinks. And so it's a bit like a starter, really. That's what you're having. It's part of the meal ahead. It's part of the socializing. And I've also had, although not in Spain, but I've had tapas type meals, and I know the kind of things that are on the menu, and I knew that there would be things that you could eat. I guess if you're really strict keto, it gets a little bit more tricky, but even then, not too much. But especially if you're more low carb and you have a few things like potatoes or something in that mix as well, very easy to find. Is it patatas bravas? I can't remember the name of the sort of Spanish omelette with potatoes and eggs. That's perfectly fine in our approach to eating. And there are lots of meaty things, and there are all sorts of things. So I was pretty confident that you'd find things. And yes, you you sent some pictures with some delicious vegetable dishes as well. It looked fantastic.
It was really good. And as you were talking, I was thinking of another experience for me, kind of going back to that idea that sometimes people might say, oh, but I'm going to such and such a place, and that one thing that everyone knows is really good there. I want to get that. This wasn't quite like that, but having been around a lot of gelato and dessert eating and pastry eating folks, I decided that I was going to have a dessert. So how was I going to do this? I do sometimes eat things that are sweetened with other things like erythritol or things. I try not to make that a regular practice because it becomes a slippery slope for me. But so I did my research and I found a place that had keto desserts in Barcelona.
Ooh.
Actually, they were all vegan, and then some of them were also keto. They're very clear. They're sweetened with erythritol and they don't have flour. So I booked it into my week that I was going to make it to this place. And it was probably about a 15 to 20-minute walk from the place where we were staying. So we came to that day when we kind of had an afternoon with some availability. And I said, well, I have a plan that I would like to do. I'm going to walk to this place and I'm going to get a keto dessert. If anyone would like to come with me, they can. But I didn't expect that my seeking of this item would be for everyone. But we all walked there and it was very hot. We were very sweaty, but we got there. And while I was talking to the woman behind the counter about which dessert I would get, one that looked good, she said something was in it that I did not understand. With her Spanish accent, I thought she said it had eggs in it. And I said, great, I eat eggs. And she kept saying it. And then I kept trying to figure out what she was saying. And she said, it has dates in it. It was sweetened with dates.
Right.
And so that very easily made me switch my focus to the other option that I had been considering. And I just asked her, what is that one sweetened with? And she said, that one only has erythritol. And it was just so much a part of our dialogue that I could say, oh, I don't eat sugar, so I'm not going to do that one. What is this one sweetened with? And so that idea too of once it's part of your identity, it's easy to ask questions. And knowing what you know, you quickly can change course. And I think of that sometimes like someone who might have a peanut allergy.
That's what I was thinking of.
When you look at one thing that you want and you say, hey, does that have peanuts or peanut butter in it? And they say, yes, it does. Like, okay, great. How about this one?
Yeah, because you wouldn't suddenly say, oh, yeah, I'll just have it just this once.
That's right. That's right. And so for me, it just was an example of how clear this identity is for me. I didn't sit there and say, oh, no, I really want that one. That's the one that looks good. Like, okay, moving on. How about this one? But again, the other part of that is I got to enjoy a dessert while I was there. And because I think That is something that, we often think about. Life is short. Enjoy the dessert. I wanted to be able to have that experience there. I wanted to do it in a way that was less problematic for me. And I found the way to do that. Now, had I not been able to find that specific place, I would have been fine to have not had dessert while I was there because I'm quite used to that here. But it was kind of fun to get to have that experience there. And again, it just really reinforced for me. I went through that conversation with her so easily. Oh, it has eggs in it? Great. I'll do that. I eat eggs. No, no, no. It has dates in it. Okay. Thank you. I don't eat sugar. I'm going to get this instead. So again, the more we make the things that we want to do, these healthy behaviors, part of our regular routine, the easier they are to navigate, the easier the choices are, the better we are at asking questions and advocating for ourselves. So it was a really great experience in lots of ways.
Yeah, and I think these things do become easier the more you do them. The longer you've been practicing this way of eating and experiencing it and playing around with it and making mistakes and going off track and seeing how that affects you and how much better you feel when you're back on track, and finding which things are things you have to completely abstain from and which things you can moderate and have occasionally, and setting all these things up. So I'm just going to throw something in there for people who are maybe newer to this, people who maybe, for example, I don't really have sugar either. I can't say it doesn't, sneak as an ingredient sometimes. Like I'll have 85% chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's got some sugar in it. So, but I'm not going to go and eat something that to me feels very sugary, like a milk chocolate, for example. But I love ice cream. I've always loved ice cream. Anyone who's listened to me for a while will know this. So going somewhere that was really known for ice cream, like I don't know that Spain is, but Italy would be. And I think Spain probably has gelato shops like France does that are really, really, really good. And I would want to experience that. Now, what I will say is that over the years, the more I have experienced it, actually, the less I've enjoyed it. Still do enjoy it, but have noticed maybe the effects it has on my body, etc. So that sort of need for it has gone down a bit, but it is still something I would want to experience. And there are ways that you can decide to do it. You can set up parameters, you can set up guardrails, I know is something that you talk about, a set of rules that you're going to apply to certain things that you want to eat, some food experiences that you want to have when you're going somewhere new, somewhere maybe, you're probably only going to be going there once. Before long, I'm going to be going back to Thailand to see my father, and there are foods there that don't really fit perfectly with the way I eat, and I'm going to want to eat them, and that's fine. Sometimes when it's something that you're doing somewhere like that, you can't actually get them at home, so that makes it easier. But there are also ways that you can have them if you decide that's what you want to do. So if you can't go the whole hog like you do and decide that you're not going to have them at all, it's not worth it for whatever reason, it doesn't fit with your identity, it's not what you're going to do. And as you've just explained, you had a brilliant holiday and you didn't miss it. But think about the timing and also when you have it. And I know that sounds the same, but it's not. And this is something that I've heard you talk about often. So maybe there is, and do your research. So that's the other thing. So there are 3 things. Find the very best example of the food that it is that you want to have. So for example, if I was going to Paris, I would want to go to Bertillon's ice cream parlor. That's just the best ice cream in Paris, only 2 or 3 shops, particular place. So again, that's going to involve something like yours did. It's going to involve like a nice walk and other things that go on. But so you do a bit of research and you find a good one. So if you're going to have it, you have a good one. Now, the second thing is something that I've heard you talk about is decide when you're going to have it. So if you're going for a week, have it on the, the second to last day and the last day or whatever, but don't start from day one, save it up. So this whole sort of delay, don't deny. And then the third thing is, even if you're having it daily, even if you've decided to have it daily, is to have it after a meal. So have it, assuming we're talking about something sweet here, is to have it as a dessert and make sure that that meal that you've had before is one that is, protein forward, something that really fits with the way you eat, something that has been filling, is satiating, has hit what you need to hit sort of macro wise to get you to that place. So then when you go to have your gelato or whatever it is, you're not really so hungry for it, and it's not going to have the same impact on your system. And you will know this, you will have undoubtedly have experienced the difference with having, it's quite typical to have an ice cream as you're wandering around in the afternoon. An ice cream experienced on an empty stomach is very different from an ice cream experience after you've had a good, satisfying meal. Like I say, you probably don't have as much. Even if you do, it's not going to have the same impact on your body. It's not going to have the same impact on your mood. You're not going to, and especially if you've been practicing quite strict low carb and keto, and then all of a sudden you go on holiday and you have an ice cream in the middle of the afternoon, quite frankly, you're going to probably feel a bit crap. Whereas if you have it at the end of the meal, it's not going to impact you. And this is what I mean by kind of experiencing things and experiencing how that affects you when you do. And we all sort of live and learn. But that's how I would do it. I would think about the things that I really wanted to have in this particular place that I was going to that was different, things that I wanted to experience. I would plan it out. I would research where I could get the best examples of those. And then I would be strategic about when in the day I ate them and when on my trip I ate them. So there are ways you can still do it.
And I think the other thing that promotes for most of us is coming home without guilt, shame, justification, or feeling like now we have to do some punitive behavior to kind of make up for what we did. Like I did not come home thinking like, okay, now I need to get back on track. Actually, being on vacation helped solidify my time restricted eating, my eating only meals. It got me more focused on that because it was so, like I said, it was just structured already because we only went to restaurants twice a day, or I only went twice a day. Other people ate a third meal. Now when I'm home, it's even more clear to me. Yep, just like when I was there, I wait until my lunch and then I eat my dinner. Daisy, the other thing I wanted to check in with you about is kind of a follow-up to a check-in with you. And I have this vision that I'm going to share because of something that's becoming such a part of your identity, a habit that is now becoming such a part of your identity. In a little over a year's time, less than a year and a half, but I don't know, 14 months or so from now, 15 months, I'm hopefully going to get to see you in the US because I'm going to have a wedding and I really want you to be there. And based on some things that you've been doing lately, I imagine seeing you during that time, there might be something different that you do. Like I'm just picturing that you get up one morning and say, okay, Terri, I'm going to go for my run now. And then when I get back, we can go do lunch or we can go do whatever. And that's not a way I would have pictured engaging with you in the past. But I can see from things that you've been sharing, like that's becoming so much a part of your identity that would happen while you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny enough, I was thinking about that the other day and thinking about the place that I know is your favorite. I was thinking, yeah, that would make somewhere for a nice run. My biggest question was, are there likely to be bears though?
I cannot deny the possibility.
But yes, funnily enough, it definitely is becoming. I can't say I'm all the way there. And it's funny how the difference between when you're on a structured scheme, like when I was doing the Couch to 5K, not that you have to get your 3 runs in a week, but if you want to stick to the cadence of the program, there are 3 runs that you do every week. and how I've noticed, and people will know that I was building up for the Race for Life 5K, which I did, and it was great. Actually, it was my first 5K. I got to my 5K, and I mentioned I had 2 ambitious goals of 1, running the whole thing, and 2, doing it in 45 minutes or under. I decided actually before I started, I wasn't going to attempt to run the whole thing. I knew that was going to be too much of a jump. And actually on the day it would have been impossible because there was such a bottleneck with the number of people. You had to walk some of it. So I'd already decided on a sort of interval with 10 minutes running, 2 minutes walking, which I mostly stuck to. And I did come in just under my 45. So I reached one of my ambitious goals, and I got to 5K, and I was part of the event, and I raised over £300 for Cancer Research UK. So all in all, it was fantastic. But after that, I haven't kept up my 3 runs a week. It's weird. I've found them harder, and I don't know if that's since I've started strength training. But I've set myself a base level that I will do at least 1 run a week. That is my minimum default. Unless you're really ill or you've injured yourself, you have to do 1 every week, but ideally 2. I'd already decided with starting the strength training 3 days a week that 2 would be the sensible, bearing in mind of course that obviously I go out on walks with dogs, and at the weekends we tend to go on longer walks, so it's not like I'm not moving every day anyway. But then of course the strength training, and that I have to say, when you start something and you really enjoy it and you think, God, why did I make such a fuss about starting this? I love it. And they were laughing at me today because I actually get through my routine pretty quickly. They're pushing me with the weights. I have not loads and loads of reps. We're really working on doing strength training, really getting the weights up. But we're starting off with a fair amount of repetition just to get me used to all the movements. And this is where it really paid off to make that decision to go to not exactly a personal trainer. I think I explained before it's a small group setting, but you get enough personal attention, especially when you're starting. It's quite intimidating. They walk all the way around you and watch you, but they're very good at adjusting your form, telling you, right, this is where you should be feeling this movement. You're not feeling it there? Right, okay, so you need to adjust this, you need to adjust that, you need to make sure you're hinging here so that you're not putting stress on your back, do this, do that. And they really make sure you're doing it properly. And I've been pushing it with the weights, but now I'm more familiar with the moves. I rattle through it, and I've still got time at the end. So I've asked him to add more moves, and he'd added more moves today, and the main guy who adds the moves wasn't there. And I still had 10 minutes. So the other guy who was there, okay, well, do you want to add something different? He was like, oh no, repeat some of these, especially the new ones. So I sort of went back over and did some more. And I'm like, oh, can I try hanging from the bar? Can I do this? Can I do that? And it's been great. I'm really enjoying it. It was certainly the way that I needed to do it to get started. And I would say the most important thing so far that's come from it, apart from the fact that I enjoy it, the people are nice, the other people who are in the groups are really nice, and starting to feel stronger. And I think it's something that comes up in podcast after podcast when they're talking about doing strength training as starting. If you're starting, which I wasn't exactly starting from zero, but definitely a newbie, that you see a lot of improvement quickly, and that will be very motivating. And that's very true. I'm stepping up the weights already and feeling like I feel stronger. But the big thing I noticed with the running an improvement in mood, and that I would always, and I still always do, feel better having done the run than before. Even if I didn't want to do it, if I go in not feeling great, I feel better afterwards. But now I compare that with the strength training. The difference is incredible. It's like the impact if you're feeling down, if you're having a day with anxiety and you go and do the strength training, the impact of that on your mood, massive.
Great.
Massive. So I've really noticed a big impact. And I'm not saying I don't want to carry on doing the running, because I do, because I want the endurance and the stamina. There are things I get from that. And I do still get a mood lift and I get those kind of benefits. But I get, from that point of view, way more from the strength training. And I was actually discussing it with a couple of the guys who were there today. They were like nodding enthusiastically. Absolutely, we agree. Yeah, and they do other things as well. And they said, for sure, this is the best and quickest way to have an impact on your mood. So it's great.
Well, great. Then I'm going to change my vision of 16 months from now when you come here, that you're going to say to me, Terri, can you show me where the gym is in your community? Because I need to go do some lifting before we do our next activity.
Well, I tell you what I will be doing. And one thing I said to him, I'd realized when I did the Couch to 5K, although I put that race in the end, and a lot of people say, book a race to be your end. I'm sort of always been a bit, I don't know if I like group events. It did actually work out really well for me, but the challenge, having that picture of what was at the end of it, of completing a 5K. And I suddenly realized, I don't know how long I'll carry on doing this with him, because it is quite expensive. But one of the things I like about it actually is that you have to sign up for a 12-week commitment. They won't take you on unless you do. You have to make that commitment. And it's a certain amount of money, which is not insignificant. It's not like going to a personal trainer, thankfully, but it's a chunk of money. So you're really putting that commitment in, and you're 3 days a week. And if you don't go, you're still paying. So you've got to go. And I was like, no, yeah, I think that's a good thing. That's a good idea. But I want something. I want some targets for the end. So we have a couple of things. And one of those is that I want to get to be able to do, I have spoken about this before, full body press-ups, push-ups. I can't remember which way round it is. What do you call them?
Push-ups.
Push-ups, press-ups. Yeah. I think they both sort of say the same thing. But yes, I want to be doing that. And we're gradually, at the moment, I'm doing it off a bar and we're working down. At the moment, I'm sort of tabletop height. I could do worktop height. I'm down to tabletop height. And yeah, apparently the lower it goes down, even small increments, it gets a lot harder. But that's the goal I've got in my head. So yeah, for sure, when I'm at your wedding, I will be doing full body press-ups, push-ups.
I was going to say, so I feel like there's going to be a push-up challenge coming when you're here. Oh, shoot, I better start working on that, because you will win.
But yeah, it's definitely becoming part of who I am. And yeah, the more I do it, and you've talked about this compounding effect, but different things have compounded to get me here. It's not been, it has been a progressive thing from sort of middle of February, beginning of March to get to this place. And the different podcasts I've been listening to and the different people saying the same thing until it finally got through, and then finding the right way for me to do it. So yeah, it hasn't been easy to get started, but now I have. I wish I'd started it a year ago.
Yeah.
So there you go. All good.
Very good.
So there we have it. Follow-up catch-up. We'll be back to our normal episodes next week.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing all of that, Daisy. It's great to hear that. And I'm excited to get to share how things went for me and my trip. So this was a fun episode for me as well.
It was great. So until I see you next time, I hope you and everyone at home has a very wonderful week.
Take good care, everyone.